Salutations, folks. Nask here. This video today is going to be addressing someone I've been unfortunately neglecting for a while. It's a shame, I must say. He really hasn't been given the kind of attention he deserves, so I felt it best to rectify the situation. He and I seem to have grown apart in our long silence, but I think this may help to reinvigorate our relationship and bring a new direction to our interactions. I am, of course, referring to our dear old friend, Steve Shives, who released a post-election video concerning Donald Trump and rape culture. Of course he did. And so, as per the mutual understanding between us, I am inclined to respond to his arguments and assist him in ascertaining some truth within the issue. Who the fuck am I kidding? He's dumb as a doorknob, and I'm gonna rip him and his argument a new one. Let's just be honest now and get right to it.
One of the worst parts of this year's U.S. presidential election was how the candidacy of Donald Trump gave a platform and a megaphone to some of the most vile elements of American society.
No doubt about it. You people came out in droves saying some of the cruelest, mean-spirited, divisive, and bigoted things I've ever heard, and did some of the most senseless, vile, and regressive things I've ever seen. I mean, goddamn, Steve. Y'all gotta tone it down a notch. Take a step back and get a good, strong whiff of the hypocrisy.
But one of the best parts of this year's election was how, by amplifying those harmful elements, it exposed them to mainstream scrutiny for the first time that I can remember.
And thank God for that. They really needed it. Thanks for making it that much easier for Trump to get elected, my dude.
Didn't wind up making a difference in the result of the election, unfortunately, but you know the old saying, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, all hope in everything.
Please tell that to all the whiny bitches wanting to abolish the Electoral College, or protesting the election results, or sending death threats to electors to try to get them to not vote for Trump, or anyone else who refuses to recognize any level of hope or optimism that perhaps a President Trump might end up being good in the end.
Anyway, one of those harmful elements is rape culture. Rape culture is not a new concept, despite some anti-feminists insisting otherwise.
Obviously, it's not a new concept. Rape cultures have and still do exist in the world. Anti-feminist contention is against the feminist claim that modern, democratic, egalitarian Western societies are rape cultures, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. If nobody was ever convicted or imprisoned for rape, then maybe you'd have the beginnings of a point.
Rape culture is an environment in which rape is prevalent and sexual violence against women is normalized and excused in the media and popular culture.
Islam. And wait, hold up. Just hold up. Why just against women? Oh, fuck, that's right. Just like damn near every modern feminist, you don't believe men can be raped or experience sexual violence, especially at the hands of women. Your wife really has trained you well with that brainwashing. When she finally lets you out of your kennel to ride you like an angry bronco and smack you around a bit, then get you to repeat the phrase, "Men cannot be raped because we enjoy and are asking for it. See? My wee-wee wasn't floppy, and everyone knows that's where our brains are. I obviously consented."
That definition comes from the Marshall University Women's Center's webpage, which is a great starting point for learning about this subject.
Methinks the Marshall University Women's Center may have an implicit bias on this matter. You'll have to excuse me if I'm skeptical of their definition and motivations.
If you're looking for something a bit more in-depth, I would recommend this book. Transforming a Rape Culture, edited by Emily Buchwald, Pamela Fletcher, and Martha Roth, which was published in 1993, by the way.
If you want to learn more about rape culture, then, there's this book you can read that will tell you all about it and, give you a really good feminist perspective on, how our society totally is one.
The Marshall University Women's Center's webpage has a list of attitudes and behaviors that perpetuate rape culture, many of which Donald Trump has been demonstrating through his words and deeds for decades.
First off, where's your evidence he's been doing or saying these things for decades? Evidence, Stephen. Evidence! Secondly, I'm going to outright call a full blanket bullshit to this entire list, simply on the basis that it's the very people you source for your definition of rape culture who anyone with half a brain can see this group has a clear bias towards attempting to perpetuate this idea. And they have their own little list of their own creation as a tool to supposedly support their position. I'm not going to waste everyone's time going through this entire list in this video and railing against every point. That would take way too long, and we just need to get on with this. So I'll probably make a separate video addressing this site you've taken us to at a later time. Please continue.
But for our purposes, let's focus on one particular example, the infamous Billy Bush tape, where Trump is heard bragging about how easy it is to assault women when you're a star. The tape begins with Trump bragging about unsuccessfully trying to sleep with a married woman. Then he goes on to boast that when you're a star, you can just start kissing women and they let you do it. You can do anything, even, quote, grab them by the pussy. Following the release of the tape, Trump attempted to excuse his behavior by dismissing it as, quote, locker room talk.
Because in its own respect, that's all it really is, Steve. Some rich, famous guy bullshitting around with other rich, famous guys. It's guy talk. I understand that it's a concept you're not really familiar with, what with being kept locked up in that kennel by your wife all day and not having the opportunity to go out and really form interpersonal relationships with other men. Can't have you doing that, right? It might break you of your conditioning. It should also probably be noted that these are men in an entirely different kind of circle within society. Wealth, fame, influence, etc. In such a circle, it's not surprising for this kind of behavior to exist, with women allowing powerful men to interact with them in these ways, even plenty of women actively seeking out or attempting to create these interactions for whatever reason, like getting something they want, currying favor, or anything of the sort. It's more than often a game of manipulation in order to get something out of these men. These men are often aware of this fact, and they play right along with it, and most of the time are aware of the differences and dynamics in their circles in comparison to the rest of society. It's not like these men are just running amok in the streets, kissing, flirting with, or grabbing the pussy of every single woman they find attractive. They know the difference of circumstance and situations.
Someone dismissive of the concept of rape culture might point out that Donald Trump insists that he has never actually done any of the things that he brags about doing on the Billy Bush tape.
And we have no reason to believe otherwise on the simple basis of, where is the proof he did do these things? For all we know, he was bullshitting and making shit up. It's the classic rich guy one-upmanship.
One might also argue that these are the terrible attitudes of just one person, and they don't prove that rape culture is a valid concept when applied to the United States as a whole.
Because it is just one person, and he doesn't represent every man, or even the majority of men in this country. To in any way suggest he does, therefore proving a rape culture exists, is like doing a study where you only address Michael Vick on the issue of dogfighting, and use that alone to conclude that all black guys partake in dogfighting. It's nonsense. If you're going to try to justify it anyways, go on.
Unfortunately, these arguments are refuted by the facts. The United States is a rape culture, and the reaction to the Billy Bush tape by a significant portion of the American people proves it.
Some people are upset about what Donald Trump said, just like, every time Trump ever says anything. So that, totally supports my narrative and proves, or whatever, that this country is horrible.
That's not proof of a rape culture, you fuck. That's just proof that some people have different perspectives and sensibilities, which by their own partisan perspectives, they feel justified in making a fuss about someone they don't like.
Let's start with Trump's explanation that what we hear on the Billy Bush tape is simply, quote, locker room talk. I'm going to give Trump's words on that tape the most charitable reading possible and imagine that Trump has never actually done the sorts of things that he describes himself doing on that tape.
See, you say that, but anyone who has even remotely watched the history of your content would be able to see from the get-go that you won't actually stick to it. Then you'll inject your own narrative into it. If you were actually to be charitable to the things Trump said in the tape, reasonably consider his explanation that it was just locker room talk, and believe that he's never actually done the things he mentions in the tape, then there's nothing to discuss. Because it would mean he'd never done those things, and he was just bullshitting with another guy the way guys bullshit around with each other. But you'll think differently. The way men interact isn't the way that women interact, so it's obviously wrong, and evil, and rapey or something, right?
For the sake of argument, I'm going to assume that what we hear Donald Trump saying on that tape is nothing more than, quote, locker room talk.
Then what's to argue about, bro?
Even with that assumption in place, we still have Donald Trump bragging to his fellow men about how, thanks to his celebrity, he can force himself on women and molest them at will and get away with it.
Which I covered already. It's an entirely different circle of society to be celebrity, to be rich and famous. The social interactions and dynamics aren't entirely akin to the everyday life of your common person. Many times, women involved with these circles, women who aren't necessarily part of these circles but involved nonetheless, allow or encourage this kind of behavior from these men in order to get something from them in some fashion. But let me guess, all women are always, in every regard, completely pure and incapable of being manipulative, encouraging behavior from men with self-serving goals in mind, or for that matter, any kind of individual agency.
If Donald Trump doesn't actually do those sorts of things to women, then he's making it up. He's bragging about imaginary sexual assaults to his fellow men because he assumes, correctly as it turns out, judging by the reactions of the other men on that tape, that they will respond with approval and admiration.
Because that is what rich, powerful, famous men do. It's a game. It's one-upmanship. It's locker room talk. How is it any different than a group of women sitting around a table down at the boardwalk, or sipping wine together in one of their living rooms, and talking about all the hot men they know and bragging to each other about what they supposedly have done with, or would want to do with, these men? Shit, I forgot, Steve. Women never do that, right? Women aren't capable of sexually objectifying men, or discussing all manner of sexualized fantasies they have about them. Only men do that, right? My bad.
What was that definition of rape culture again?
The definition of rape culture from an evidently biased source which just so happens to exclude everyone except women, supported by nonsensical examples of it, and implicitly spitting in the very face of masculinity, male interactions, and male victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, and rape.
Don't go far, I'm going to need you again in a second. Now let's consider how people responded to Trump's locker room talk excuse. True, many of us didn't buy it, but many of us did. In fact, many of us echoed it ourselves, saying that we and other men that we know talk about women that way all the time.
And so it has to be brought up again, apparently. What about women who talk about men like that? Why do you so blatantly disregard even the idea that women can and do sexually objectify, sexually assault, and rape men, and excuse the actions of these women? Why sweep male victims under the rug? Sounds to me like you're supporting a rape culture, Steve.
So not only was Trump correct when he assumed that his bragging about being able to sexually assault women would be met by the approval and the admiration of the other men on that Access Hollywood bus, many of us stepped forward and said that we do the exact same thing all the time. So if we live in a society where people regularly brag about sexually assaulting others in order to impress people, and we do it so regularly and are so comfortable with it that we seem to not understand why other people are upset by it, how might you describe such a society?
Men being men, bragging about sexual exploits to each other, trying to impress other men and one-up each other. Such a sign of rape culture, eh? You keep on referring to it all as sexually assaulting women, but you never once take into consideration the likelihood that many women may instigate, encourage, or actively seek that kind of attention from men. You don't even entertain the notion that this could be the case. You just assume women are always the victims. You don't entertain the idea that some women want this kind of attention and behavior from men for the countless types of reasons. You don't even entertain the idea that women have their own agency and are capable of making their own choices, and some of these women will choose to seek this kind of behavior from some men, particularly if those men are famous, celebrity, and wealthy. To you, it's just always the man's fault. Women are always the victim. Women couldn't possibly encourage this kind of behavior, and it's always just sexual assault. Not to mention that the very definition you use for a supposed rape culture is entirely predicated on a perspective that aligns with your own about disliking this kind of behavior, so even just men bragging to each other about sexual exploits that could have not even actually happened is somehow excusing rape. All the while, out there in the world we have clear and obvious examples of real rape cultures. Cultures that actively forgive or even encourage the rape of women, that excuse an epidemic rape of women, even children, with laws and perspectives often derived from religious texts or cultural heritage, that punish the victims of rape with beatings, acid thrown in their faces, or even being outright killed for the sake of family honor. These rape cultures clearly and evidently exist, and yet you, like so many feminists these days, refuse to even acknowledge them, God forbid actually doing anything to oppose them, or even help the women and victims in these cultures. Nah. It's much more important for you to worry about making sure that men in this part of the world can't talk about their sexual exploits or make dirty jokes. I'm barely halfway through your video and you're already pissing me off with your blatant hypocrisies, sexist narratives, and inexcusable forgiveness of real rape cultures. Uptight, whiny nonsense like this and the overwhelming focus on trivialities is exactly why people like you are the real rape apologists and are actively spitting in the faces of real rape victims and their experiences. But I guess we'll just keep fucking going then.
And to anyone who would still argue that rape culture is not a valid way of looking at American society, let me reiterate that those who accepted and repeated Donald Trump's locker room talk excuse have already admitted that we live in such a culture where people feel at liberty to brag about committing sexual assault in order to impress their buddies.
I'm just going to point you right back to my previous response. Men bragging to each other about sexual exploits is evidence that America is a rape culture. Places where women, and even children, are actively raped, beaten, sexually assaulted, and victimized, as well as punished or even killed because they were raped? Nah, those aren't rape cultures. Yes, Steve, this is actually what you're saying, and so implicitly stating that you actually believe it. I can't even begin to describe how sad, shallow, and pathetic this entire narrative of yours is.
Whether or not they are actually committing these crimes is beside the point. The crime of sexual assault is taken so lightly that it's considered praiseworthy to claim that you do it.
You keep sitting on assuming it's all sexual assault. You continue to disregard the agency of women, or even the possibility that women are capable of encouraging this behavior. And what do you mean, whether or not they are actually committing this crime is besides the point? It's entirely the point. If they were actually committing acts of sexual assault, that shit gets taken very seriously. An endlessly long and thorough history of crimes of sexual assault, rape, and sexual violence being punished in this country is evidence of exactly how seriously we take legitimate concerns of these crimes. By saying that it's besides the point whether they committed such crimes or not, that's implicitly stating that it doesn't matter even if they didn't commit these crimes. That accusations or presumptions of it should be enough. Should we punish and imprison men who are even accused of sexual assault or rape, even when the accusations are false and proven to be? Or how about just because men make up some shit to other men and partake in locker room talk? How about even men just having sexual thoughts about a woman? What is the implication here, Steve? At what point do you stop considering something a sexual assault? At what point do you not punish men for their words or thoughts? At what point do you stop looking at situations objectively? At what point do we ignore innocent until proven guilty and just consider men outright guilty? Personally, I'm not too keen on an authoritarian thought police, Steve.
And if you have already admitted that we live in such a society, you have admitted that we live in...
It's admission of nothing, since the definition itself, as well as the very basis for it, is entirely motivated by an agenda, by a false narrative, and by definitive anti-male bias.
But wait, someone might object, according to that definition, a rape culture is not merely an environment where rape is excused and normalized, but where rape is prevalent. And if we are assuming for the sake of argument that Trump and others who engage in locker room talk aren't actually committing the sexual assaults they brag about committing, how can we say that rape is prevalent in the United States?
Examining the rape and sexual assault statistics of Islamic countries and many places in Africa would be a good example of prevalence. If you did, though, I think you might find some pretty distinct differences in comparison to the West, however. That wouldn't support your narrative, of course, so you won't even bother. So let's hear what kind of so-called evidence you have about the prevalence of rape and sexual assault in this country, supposedly being proof of our rapey culture.
Well, we can say that rape is prevalent in the United States because we have crime statistics testifying to that fact. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, in the year 2014, the most recent year for which I could find data, there were 284,350 rapes and sexual assaults reported in the U.S. To put that number in perspective, that same year there were 33,599 total gun-related deaths, according to the Centers for Disease Control. There were also 47,055 drug overdose deaths that year, again, according to the CDC. The number of gun deaths in the U.S. is considered by many of us to be a national tragedy, and the federal government has been conducting a so-called war on drugs since the Nixon administration. And yet in 2014, there were 8.5 times as many rapes and sexual assaults reported as there were gun deaths, and 6 times as many rapes and sexual assaults reported as there were drug overdose deaths.
I gave you a good while to have your say, so you'll have to forgive me if I take a good long while myself to address your claims. First, let's go ahead and address the source for your number of 284,350. The Bureau of Justice Statistics criminal victimization data for the year 2014. The first thing we can see at the top of the first page is a graph denoting the violent crime and property crime victimization between the years 1993 and 2014. We aren't concerned in this talk with property crime, simply the violent crime. So it's the red line we're going to focus on, which represents violent crime rates per 1,000 persons aged 12 or older. Violent crime being defined as rape or sexual assault, robbery, aggravated assault, and simple assault. In and of itself, this graph blatantly shows a significant decrease in violent crime over the last 20 years, from nearly 80 per 1,000 persons down to approximately 20 per 1,000 persons. The report says there was no significant change in the overall rate of violent crime from 2013, 23.2 victimizations per 1,000 persons aged 12 or older, to 2014, 20.1 per 1,000. However, the rate of violent crime in 2014 was lower than the rate in 2012, 26.1 per 1,000. From 1993 to 2014, the rate of violent crime declined from 79.8 to 20.1 per 1,000. Right off the bat, we see an obvious and precipitous decline in violent crimes over the last 20 years. Taking further into consideration the vast population difference between 1993 and 2014. In 1993, the population of the United States was 257,746,103. As of 2014, the population had risen significantly to 320,282,544, an increase of 62,536,441 in just 2 decades. That's huge. Add to the fact that in 1993, the prevalence of violent crime was at rates of 79.8 per 1,000 persons, sharply falling to a rate of 20.1 per 1,000 persons. Those two facts in conjunction point to a massive decrease in violent crime prevalence. And that's all violent crime, not just rape and sexual assault. When it comes specifically to rape and sexual assault, you pull your number from the chart on page 2, labeled Violent Victimization, by type of violent crime, 2005, 2013, and 2014, under the rape and sexual assault category for 2014. What you neglect to mention is that despite an increase in population levels from the previous year, it is a decrease of roughly 16,000 by comparison to 2013. What you also fail to mention is the portion of the chart which prescribes these numbers as a rate per 1,000 persons aged 12 or older, being at 1.1. That is a rate of 1.1 per 1,000 persons by comparison to the overall violent crime victimization rate of 20.1, barely 5% of the total violent crime rate. It should then be noted that you use the number of firearm-related deaths in your numbers, but neglected to include the information on firearm-related incidents and victimizations. One would think if we were going to use the rape and sexual assault victimization numbers, and then feel the need to bring firearms into the picture, you'd use a similar basis for appropriate comparison. But of course, you don't, because you have a fucking agenda. You only focus on firearm-related deaths, not victimizations. So here's some numbers for you from the very Bureau of Justice Statistics report that you cite. Firearm incidents for the year 2014 came to 414,700, with the number of firearms victimizations totaling 466,110. Numbers significantly higher than the previous year, which came to 290,620 and 332,950 respectively. So getting just this far into your bullshit, we can already tell that you're cherry-picking numbers, neglecting comparisons, and spinning what you present as evidence of overwhelming prevalence of rape and sexual assault in this country. I'm going to have to apologize to my viewers for how long this response has been, as well as for how much longer I'm going to go into it, but I feel it's only appropriate that I show you just how fucking wrong and how much of a lying shitbag Steve Shives really is. We're only this far into it, and I can already show exactly how you're full of shit.
But wait, there's more!
We then move further down the report to a section labeled Number of Victims and Prevalence Rate by Type of Crime 2005, 2013, and 2014. Now here's the bit we're really interested in, right Steve? Prevalence. Number of victims. For rape and sexual assault, the number of victims totaled 150,420. A sizable drop from the previous year of 173,610. That's the number of victims. Now let's look at the prevalence rate. Violent crime as a whole tallied in at 1.11% for the year of 2014, compared to 2013 at 1.15% and 2005 at 1.37%. It should be described now what they mean by prevalence rate. Percentage of persons aged 12 or older who experienced at least one victimization during the year for violent crime. This obviously meaning that one person could experience more than one victimization. The number you presented of 284,350 was the victimization numbers, not the number of victims. According to this chart, 2014 is used as the comparison year. Next to the violent crime prevalence percentage, we find a little cross, which by their chart indicates significant difference from comparison year at the 95% confidence level. What this means is that from 2005 to 2014, 9 years, there was a significant change in the prevalence of violent crime, in particular a significant decrease. We look further into the chart to see that for the particular case of rape and sexual assault, it clocked in at 0.06 by comparison to robbery at 0.16 and assault marked for aggravated or simple assault at 0.92. A vastly different level of prevalence. And that's just under violent crime, not also including serious violent crime. This gives rape and sexual assault an abysmally low level of prevalence, obviously. This entire misrepresented spiel of yours also neglects a couple of very important points. One being that it does not distinguish between the genders of victims of rape and sexual assault, which I am extremely sure that a significant portion of which are male. The definition you present specifies only women, and you push that point consistently through your video. You then misrepresent the numbers from the very source you use and attempt to conflate those numbers to somehow be only referring to female victims of rape and sexual assault. If an article by Hannah Rosin at Slate.com is to be taken into account, an estimated 38% of incidents of rape and sexual assault victims were men. The number seems so high that it prompted researcher Lara Stempel to call the Bureau of Justice Statistics to see if maybe it had been a mistake or changed its terminology. After all, in years past, men had accounted for somewhere between 5 and 14% of rape and sexual violence victims. But no. It wasn't a mistake, officials told her. Stempel, who works with the Health and Human Rights Project at UCLA, had often wondered whether incidents of sexual violence against men were underreported. Stempel began digging through existing surveys and discovered that her hunch was correct. The experience of men and women is a lot closer than any of us would expect, she says. So even if we were to take that 38% and apply it to the 150,420 victims, extracting the male victims, since you don't seem to think men can be raped or sexually assaulted, we get a total number of 93,260. Seems to be significantly less than your stated and unclarified number of 284,350. Now, just for the sake of argument, let's take those 93,260 female victims of rape and sexual assault and apply it to the total U.S. population at the end of 2014, which, as we've said before, was 320,282,544. This is a prevalence rate of 0.00029%. Now, admittedly, I use the total U.S. population, not just the female population, but even if that's to be taken into consideration, and we conservatively say that 50% of the population is female, that would give us roughly 161 million women in this country, which would only double that prevalence rate to 0.00058%. Still an abysmally low number, an abysmally low percentage. I still can't see how it's in any way representative of extreme prevalence. Methinks you just might be falsely presenting statistics to spin a narrative. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I could seriously keep going and put the proverbial boot right up the ass of your entire argument here, but I think I've done enough for now. Sorry for boring you folks, but it had to be addressed. Let's continue to the end of this then.
Just in case that isn't pervasive enough for you, let me present for your consideration one final bit of information, also from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. On average, an estimated 211,200 rapes and sexual assaults went unreported to police each year between 2006 and 2010. Although serious violent crime was generally less likely to go unreported to the police than simple assault, a higher percentage of rape or sexual assault, 65%, than simple assault, 56%, victimizations went unreported over the 5-year period.
And given the prevalence of men being far more likely not to report rape or sexual assault than women, due to the overwhelming stigmatization against men who are the victims of these crimes, as well as pressure from people like the feminist movement who are unwilling to take male victims into consideration, or even outright acknowledge that men can be and are victims of rape and sexual assault, there is a good to fair chance that an extremely significant number of unreported cases are those by male victims. But you won't acknowledge that reality, so you'll just spin some nonsense about there could be this many victims of rape and sexual assault every year, but men can't be raped, so they're all women, because that's how I can spin and attempt to justify my narrative. Go on then, prove me right.
So take the 284,350 rapes and sexual assaults reported in 2014 and assume there were at least another 200,000 that occurred but weren't reported. That's nearly 500,000 rapes and sexual assaults in the United States in a year. An environment where rape is prevalent and sexual violence against women is normalized and excused in the media and popular culture. That's us.
You're right, Steve. That is you. That is the feminist movement. That is people who refuse to acknowledge male victims of rape and sexual violence. That is people who intentionally misrepresent data in order to support their own false narratives. That is people who intentionally define a rape culture as being one where only women are the victims of it, rather than ever acknowledging male victims or presenting full and clarified information on a subject, but instead choose to cherry-pick some numbers and intentionally misrepresent them and spin them as if to be supposedly supporting your claims. That is you. That is feminism.
And Donald Trump is our mascot. And our next president.
You can keep him if you'd like. An abrasive, lying, socially unacceptable shitbag would fit right in with your ranks. He's all yours. Jesus. Well, that's the end of this video, and I think I did a fairly well enough job of refuting his bullshit. Again. I'm sorry I couldn't make it funnier towards the end, but given the content I was responding to, it ended up really lighting a fire under my ass in the latter half of his video, and I really felt the need to put the boot to his ass, lest the level of bullshit flying out of it made too much of a mess and got all over everything. I usually don't go into such detail when responding to these people, but hey, they brought up the numbers first. I just felt obligated to shine a light on it for him. With any luck, Steve will actually give this video a thorough watch and publicly acknowledge that he was intentionally attempting to deceive people with his argument. Doubtful, though. He's the kind of fragile cuck who can't stand being disagreed with on any point, or even attempt to give rebuttal to his detractors. Hence why he just blocks everyone who doesn't agree with him, including myself. If he hasn't blocked you, yet, and you're so inclined, maybe you can link this video to him on Twitter and ask him to explain himself. Who knows, maybe he actually will at some point. As dry as the video got toward the end, it was still a fun one to do for me. Hope you good folks enjoyed it all. Before you go, remember to like and subscribe, check out my links in the description to Twitter, Patreon, and Ask.fm, where you can help support this channel and ask me anything you can possibly think of. This has been the Word from the Wolf. Woof woof, motherfuckers.